So welcome to the Post-Polio Syndrome Advocacy Group. This is our open meeting that we have once a month. We are very happy to have somebody here who specializes in helping people who need help, and it doesn't get much better than that in terms of advocacy. The format today will be a little bit different. I'm going to be the opening act and the closing act, and Ken, who's had what he calls delicious conversations with our speaker, Jill, today. He's going
Jill,
to
I
take...
never said that.
Liar, liar,
I don't want you to get me in trouble. No, I don't.
Don't worry, don't worry.
I never
We're here
heard
to
the word
protect you.
delicious.
We're here to protect you. And Ken will take over because they've had some, excellent conversation, and it would be a great way to keep us on track as well, since Ken is sort of the fearless leader of what we do. So I will say good morning, welcome to everybody, and Ken, take it away.
Okay, thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, who I'm going to let her introduce herself, but she's into psychotherapy, and she is a certified social worker, and she's been doing this for like 18 years. And I think we're going to have a really interesting conversation today that we can all relate to. So to start out with, Jill, let's why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about what you do and what a psychotherapist does and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. It's really an honor, and it's nice to see some familiar faces as well. I am in Denver, Colorado, and I have been here for 10 years as of this year. And I have a private practice, and I'm a therapist. And I work mainly with people who are getting older and who have disabilities and who recognize that this affects our mental health. I started working with the Colorado Post-Polio organization in 2018, at the very end of 2018, and I've been leading a couple of support groups. And I think the reason that I was really excited to talk with Ken and with you guys is because, as a social worker, I'm an advocate, and I see you as peers in a lot of ways. And I hope this conversation is really geared toward how, as advocates...
Sharon, get me a coffee, please.
Oh, who's that?
Hold on, I'm muted. I got it. Okay, all set.
Go ahead. Sorry, Jill.
It's okay. I just want you guys to know this is a little bit of a...
Oh, shit. Oh, I didn't get it.
Got it.
This is a little different conversation because I know you guys are advocates. I know from the people that are part of the support groups. So we're going to kind of couch this in, yes, I can talk to you about these things, and you've probably experienced them and have your own
Sharon, shut the fuck up. I'm in a Zoom meeting.
Who's up?
John, can you watch this guy? Okay.
Okay.
Very good. Does that sound okay to everyone?
Okay, that sounds fine. Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah. I would also mention that my training, in addition to what in my grad school program was called late life challenges, my training is also in trauma and helping with trauma, which plays a part in talking about our mental health. What we went through in the past plays into what we're experiencing in the present. And it also plays into how we approach the things that happen to us in the future. So we'll talk a little more about that.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Jill.
Yeah.
And today we're going to talk, it sounds like a negative subject, but it's really not going to be a negative subject. We're going to talk about bad days.
Sharon, you fucking poor. Give me a coffee right now.
Okay. All right, he's gone. It's gone. Hold on. gone. He's not coming back, hopefully.
Spicy
Sorry
group
about
this
that. There is
morning.
occasional that I have run into people that hack into the group. And obviously this guy was doing it. So you keep an eye on it, John, okay? Talking about bad days. We're talking,
I'm onto it, Ken.
okay,
I'm
thank
trying
you.
to track where he is.
Okay,
But I've taken him out completely.
all right, thank you, John. Okay, so this happens. I've had this happen before, really worse than this. So bad days can range everything from let's talk about what a bad day is, because people can have bad moods versus something more serious. Let's just talk kind of come up with a definition of what a bad day is.
I think that a bad day is often whatever we deem as not having things meet our expectations, right? Not having life throwing us something that maybe we didn't expect, giving us bad news. And there's a difference, right? There's a difference between a bad day and something that continues on. Bad days we can recover from. Bad days we kind of go into a funk, and we all have our different ways of coping with that, but we can recover with whether it's maybe you call your sister. I call my sister if I'm having a bad day. I think the thing to keep in mind is bad days we often can cope with, but when that becomes a persistent pattern where we can't get our mind out of that headspace of, man, everything is against me, all I'm doing is fighting. That's when that goes on and on and on, it really does something to our body. And that can be when a bad day turns into something that could be a mental health issue.
And bad days can be caused by many things, both external or internal. Obviously, when we talk about both of those, external things that cause bad days and internal things that cause bad days.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is, expectations, right, of life are silent contracts or agreements we've made with life that life knows nothing about. So a lot of times people come in and they are very good at explaining everything that's wrong with their exterior landscape, everything that's going on in their world, in the world at large. Sometimes we call that going global, right? Let me tell you about everything that's going wrong. And it's also kind of an art to be able to look inside and be able to say, what's my internal landscape saying right now? We know that emotions are signals, that the body is giving to us and picking up from the environment. And the emotions are trying to tell us something. And those are internal, but a lot of us have been taught to not pay attention to our feelings or to stuff them. And then there's all kinds of things that happen when we don't acknowledge what's going on the inside of us. Sometimes we call it squishing out. They squish out sideways in different ways.
And oftentimes we create those things too, that when they're not there, we worry too much too.
Yeah. That's
Which
exactly
a
right.
good quote is, worry is a misuse of imagination. So, and so let's separate this a little bit further. So there's a bad day, a mood issue, or something more serious that's going on. Then there's burnout too. Can you talk about burnout, what it is and how to deal with that?
Yeah, so burnout is, usually we talk about burnout when it comes to the workplace, right? And for those of us who are advocates, it sometimes feels like we're always in the workplace. We're always having to advocate for ourselves. the signs and symptoms of burnout are, it's a response to, we would say burnout is a response to poor working conditions, first of all. But the symptoms are emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, or oversensitivity. And then this reduced sense of personal accomplishment, this feeling of I can't impact the things that I want to by doing the work that I feel like I'm meant to do. So burnout on a sustained basis could definitely lead to, multiple bad days, that pattern that produces some negative consequences in our lives, which is kind of how we would describe depression.
Burnout kind of leads to depression, could lead to depression, certainly.
Yeah. And how many of you guys have experienced burnout? Yeah. Yeah. It's very common with people who are being advocates. And partly because our focus is on the bigger picture. Our focus is on something is wrong and how do I change it? Excuse me. So when we're constantly advocating for ourselves, we can get burned out from that being our job. We can start to feel like, am I making a difference? And we really have to go back to, did I make a difference to one person? I mean, I can't tell you the number of times that somebody comes into my office and they leave and I think, did I help? Was that useful? And so part of what we have to do, part of what I've realized as an advocate is we have to get feedback from other people. And we might have to get some feedback from people who really know us well and who are not necessarily in the situation. As mammals, we're wired for connection. We rest and digest best when we're connected socially to other people. And part of that is we don't have a hard shell, right? We don't have anything else to protect us. Our protection is being in groups. So even groups like this feel safer, right? We have a sense of, oh, I can talk about the things that are going on. And we all need that. We all need that. And I think it can be really easy as we get older to get isolated. It can be very easy to feel invisible. And all of those protective emotions like fear, anger, sadness, shame's probably the number one protective emotion. All of those kick in if we don't have connection to other people. And so it's one of those, well, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Did you get isolated first and then you got depressed? What happened? But really what it comes down to is we all do better when we can have connective emotions like love and play and joy. And when our nervous system can just calm down, right? And we'll talk about the nervous system with a little bit, unless you want to talk about it now, but we'll talk about the nervous system and the different states of the nervous system. And that's really the approach that I use. Are we over responsive to our environment, or are we under responsive to it? Or are we in that really nice spot where we feel like we have connection and we can feel those connective emotions?
And we can get into that in a second. I think that's going to be a fascinating part of your discussion. Ina has asked a question: how about burnout from coping, accommodating all the time?
Yeah, I believe it's a real thing. Is it okay, Ken, if I talk a little bit about?
Yeah, you go.
Okay.
You're the boss.
Thank you. So Ina, do you want to elaborate a little on your question so I make sure I'm answering it right?
No, I think it's that we all have spent so much time and effort, being okay in the world, that I think
Yes.
the exhaustion from that is a form of burnout as well, because we are all at a certain level where we choose to try to stay. And so I just wanted to attach that to not just the workplace, because it's like working all day long to cope.
Yes. 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 And I would tell you guys that I can relate to that just because we're talking about this on a kind of a peer level. I'm a colorectal cancer survivor, and there are pieces, right? I present well, you would never know, but every single day it is constantly on my mind. What's going to happen within my system? I forgot what else I was going to say. Ina, can you say your question again? Sometimes that happens.
I said
Hoping.
because you know what it is.
Yeah, I got it. I got
Okay.
it. Thank you. Okay. So this is, you guys, this is my favorite description of what, or favorite visual of what happens when we're coping every single day with trying to be okay, right? So this is a rubber band. Okay. And for a lot of us, there have been times in our lives where who we are in our head is very congruent with who the world sees, what the world sees on the outside. You think about maybe you're in a relationship. When you started that relationship, it was really easy to know what was expected of you. But maybe as the situation changes, you are required, there are more obligations and duties. The same thing happens internally to us when who I am in my head, right? So for me, this used to be somebody who had never had cancer and who was very active. But then I find out that I have a cancer diagnosis, and suddenly who I am in my head doesn't match what the world sees. I have medical appointments. I have to adjust my schedule. So for post-polio syndrome, right? I lived my life. I knew exactly who I was in my career. And as time went on, as I got older, maybe my body wasn't quite doing what I used to be able to expect it to do. Maybe I find, a lot of my social life is going to medical appointments. All of a sudden, my family or friends has to take more care of me. So that rubber band gets really, really tight. And sometimes we say, I just don't have the bandwidth, right? That band can't get any tighter because it's going to break. When who I am in my head doesn't match how the world sees me or what's expected of me, we call this an identity discrepancy. Okay, and we know that identity discrepancies cause depression. We know that they're hard on the nervous system. And part of what we're doing is trying to go back to, okay, who can I be myself around? Who do I feel connected to? Because we don't want this rubber band to break. This was an image that was, I first learned when I was introducing a family caregiver support program that was established by Rhonda Montgomery from the University of Milwaukee, Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And she used this for people who are caregivers. And my first thought is, this fits really well when I have had a long time where I was able-bodied, and now there's something I can't do. Okay, so identity discrepancies, that rubber band getting too tight, they cause depression. we also know, do you know when this happens the most in our lives? This happens right after undergrad, right after we graduate from college, often, because we don't know, what are we going to do with our lives? All of a sudden, I'm an adult. And it also happens in retirement a lot. You know, sometimes people assume that depression is something that just comes as we get older. But we know that the incidence of depression, they're very similar with people, like there's similar rates for people who've retired and people who are graduating from undergrad. Getting older does not mean that you're going to experience more mental health issues if the things are in place that allow you to have those connected emotions. And those connected emotions keep that rubber band from breaking. Because when I'm seen and heard and recognized and nurtured for who I am, I feel like I belong in the world. It matches.
Very good. Very good. And, you know, too, in the disability field in particular, burnout is often felt by the caregiver.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so it's myself, but then you got to think about those people taking care of you too.
And exactly. That's where this originally came from. And then we would look at the different factors. Okay, what is the emotional impact? What's the social impact? What is the financial impact? And what's the physical impact?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's kind of move in a direction as to when we need to seek out help from other people. So when you're having a bad day, I guess you have two options. Try to deal with it. And I guess that's what we do first. We try to deal with it ourselves. How do you feel about that? I mean, is it better to try to just let it pass and hope it goes away? Or to start thinking about maybe I should get some help somewhere?
Yeah. Well, the science tells us that when we have a bad day, our body is picking up on triggers from the environment that we need to pay attention to. And as much as mindfulness, right, has been turned into something that we capitalize on and market, especially in the United States a lot, being aware of the feelings is really a first place to start that we often just skate right over the top of. I often remind clients, we don't have to teach a baby how to feel their feelings. And we know so a lot of our nervous system is kind of governed by our vagus nerve. And that's the nerve that is in the body. 80% of that nerve gives signals back to the brain, and only 20% of it is the brain giving signals to the body. So it's like your satellite dish for your body. And those emotions are actually physical signals that either something is safe or something's not safe, that we're in control or we're not in control. And they're kind of like lights on the dashboard of your car. So when your check engine light comes on, right? I'm having a bad day, check engine light comes on. You can either pay attention to that light and try and figure out what the source is, or what a lot of us have been taught is to just clip the wire. Then I'm uncomfortable. The check engine light came on. Why don't I just put a piece of tape over it? So if you think of emotions that way, as something that is a signal from the body, if we recognize that, if we say, why am I feeling fragile? Why am I feeling so unsettled after I talk to that person? Then we can check in with other people. Then we can check in with ourselves. And a lot of times those emotions go away. But when we walk around ignoring all the emotions, Eventually, they're going to squish out sideways. Eventually, all those lights on the dashboard are going to come on because the body's saying, there's an emergency and trying to protect us.
And this gets into a subject also of stigma. So stigma on myself. Oh my God, I must be, I have my mental problems because I need to get help. I can't deal with myself. Stigma, worrying about how my family's going to feel about me getting help, and how society looks at people who seek help.
Yeah, it absolutely turns into, it also, it's hard to reach out when we think things are stigmatized. We have come a long way, but I think there is a lot of room for us to advocate for mental health in people, those of us as we're getting older. Okay, because especially during COVID, I mean, what did we talk about? We talked about mental health. And there is a lot of stigma. It's brave for somebody to be able to come into therapy or say to their doctor, I just don't feel like myself these days. This has really taken a toll on me. It's brave to be able to say that to our family. And if we can go back to the nervous system, and if it's okay for me to share my screen, I'll show you part of what's happening. Is that okay?
You're all set.
Okay, let me show you guys this. Some of you guys who've seen me present before have seen this. So what I'm talking about with the nervous system is polyvagal theory. And that green zone at the top, that's rest and digest. That's where we feel connected to the greater world. That's where we can actually digest our food. Because when we start to get a little bit stressed out, when the body's, that vagus nerve, right, it likes to stay in rest and digest some of the time. But when it picks up on information from the environment, or it could be from our thoughts, that there's something going on in the world that I need to pay attention to, it's going to move into different nervous system states. So we call it sometimes going up and down this autonomic nervous system ladder. The first response to a threat is for us to go into flight or fight, and that's that orange-yellow area. It kind of looks like a stoplight, right? So let's just call it yellow. That's where I'm in danger and my body is activated to run or to fight back. The interesting thing is a lot of us spend a ton of time in this state with our nervous system in this state. And that's where cortisol is being released, the body is activated. And often this can be, if we stay in that state for a long time, that can be chronic anxiety. Now, it's hard for the body to be in that state for long periods. And when we try to help somebody get into that green zone, sometimes the nervous system says, I just don't have the capacity for that. And I collapse down to the bottom, to that dorsal vagal stage, which is I'm shut down. And that's the freezer fawn. That freezer fawn is my body literally is preparing for death, right? So I'm going to pull in all of my energy to the center, keep my vital organs going, but I just can't cope. I'm completely shut down. We need to have, it's not that we're trying to stay in that green state all the time. It's more that we want the mechanism between all of these states to be able to move. So we need to like squirt some WD-40 on it. And that's what therapy and antidepressants do. Make it so that I am able to move into these different states. In fact, sometimes we experience 2 states at a time. When we're playing and we're engaged in something fun, we are actually in the yellow state and the green state together. When we're sleeping, we can't move, but we're resting and digesting, right? So that's when the nervous system is using the green state and the red state together. So it's not one, it's not like we're always trying to be in that green state, but is the body able to be there in that rest and digest? And when we look at it this way, right, like what's the best thing for my nervous system, which was at some point honed to protect me, then it's a nervous system state. It's less about, oh, do I have a mental illness? Oh, what do we need to do? I have found with a lot of people that when we can look at it this way, as the nervous system being a mechanism that's giving us information, a lot of the stigma goes down. And we know that trauma can play a role in this, right? I'm going to stop sharing real quick. I just want to let you guys know. Trauma can play a big role in this because as humans, we're constantly learning. I mean, that's what babies do, right? They learn and learn and learn and learn and learn. And we're taught to acquire those skills. And then we can get to the point where life takes things away from us. And we're not taught how to figure out how to let go of certain things. We're not taught, we're very phobic about death. We're very phobic about aging. That's why there's ageism. We're phobic about having a disability. But if we look at those nervous system states and we say, oh, this is something I learned early on, then we can work at how do I get that mechanism to let me go into rest and digest? How do I have to take care of myself? And I think that's a piece that all of you guys know from your own experience. The trauma comes in. Sometimes we talk about it like almost like digesting. You know, if I did something really embarrassing on Monday and today is Thursday, like maybe I had a bowel accident. Tends to happen now. Maybe that happened in a public place and I'm super embarrassed. But at this point, I can call different people and talk with them. I can write in my journal. I can pursue like pelvic floor physical therapy. I can do all of these things to help myself, right? And when I do those things, I start to feel better. What happens though is, with that trauma piece, that's where I was headed. With that trauma piece, so let's say by Thursday, I can tell you guys, I had an accident on Monday. It's what happened. Anyone who's part of my support group knows that we have had these conversations a lot, right? About how our body kind of fails us sometimes later in life. It becomes trauma when it's 20 years down the road and what happened 20 years ago feels like it just happened on Monday. And my brain hasn't been able to digest it yet. Did I explain that in a way that makes sense? Okay.
Yeah, I think you did. So now you take a holistic approach to things. So I'm interested what your answer is to this, because oftentimes you go to a therapist and they'll give you medication. So what is your thoughts on medication?
Mm-hmm. Sometimes, I mean, I would say that we have come so far in the last 30 years with being able to help people get onto a medication like an antidepressant that really works for them. And sometimes that's exactly what is needed, even just temporarily, to give people a little bit of space from themselves, a little bit of space from this pattern of negativity that's having all of these consequences. You know, technically depression based on the DSM would be, I'm having bad days, low mood, most of the days in the past 2 weeks. Well, my guess is we've all probably had that, especially while we're healing, right? So technically that would be that would be depression. Medications can be really, really helpful in, okay, how do I get a little bit of space, right? Medications are part of this rubber band thing. How do I give myself a little bit of space, that nervous system, so that I can function and figure out my coping mechanisms to get back to who I am in my head is okay in this world and what the world expects of me. And there are all different kinds. You know, most of the people that come into my office, they are on an SSRI, which is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. In the United States, those have to be prescribed by somebody with a medical license, you know, so primary care, your doctor. And the ones that are SSRIs also tend to address anxiety. So it's kind of a double effect of like, okay, how do we help the nervous system calm down just a little bit and then build some coping mechanisms in? Maybe do some work to help overcome that trauma. And a lot of times when we can take care of those pieces, then people go off of them. And there are those of us that maybe because of our genetic makeup or because of what we've experienced, we stay on medications throughout our lives, and that's okay too. One piece to pay attention to that I see a lot of times with older adults is we call it, this is not clinical, but we call it the poop out effect. And I can't tell you the number of people who've come into my office who say, oh yeah, I've been on 40 milligrams of Lexapro for the past 20 years. Oh, is it doing anything? I have no idea, but I'm feeling kind of down now. And they haven't looked into, oh, is there something else I could be on that might help me? I've also had people that are very resistant to taking something like, oh, my doctor prescribed 50 milligrams of Zoloft, sertraline, right? I'm seeing a lot of sertraline right now because it's very well tolerated. Oh, my doctor prescribed this, but I don't feel any different. But I don't think I need therapy anymore. Well, guess what? Your antidepressant is probably working. Like suddenly I'm connecting with my family. My relationships got a little easier. It could be that there's some low-grade depression going on just because of what you have to go through and live through on a daily basis.
So I do want to get to other people's questions. I'm sure there are people that have them here. Okay, so I had come to the conclusion, yes, maybe I need to do something beyond what I'm doing of trying to cope with my situation. What are some of the things that people can do? I mean, you're a psychotherapist, so I assume one of the answers is to go to you or somebody like you. And what are the kind of list of things people can consider doing at this stage?
Yeah. Well, and let's also acknowledge that it's really hard to reach out when you're in a funk, when you have the blues, when you have some depression going on. Obviously, finding a therapist, and I would say finding a therapist that has a really good understanding of the body, right? We're not looking for a therapist. Sometimes we call it an therapist that's just going to agree with everything you say. You want somebody that's going to push you and help you have some insight into your situation. And you want somebody that's going to acknowledge that we have feelings and emotions that are tied to the rest of our body. One idea might be to look at the find a therapist through the International EMDR organization. It's called EMDRIA. I can send you the link, but they have a find a therapist tool that's international. And EMDR therapists are definitely trained in this nervous system piece. You could also, second thing I would say is have a really honest discussion with your doctor. Like, I just don't feel like myself. You don't have to say the word depression. You could say, I'm finding that nobody can give me the right answer. I'm finding I'm more sensitive than I used to be. I feel like I'm always on the verge of tears. Or maybe in your body, maybe the way that you experience emotions is you have like digestive problems, or you get headaches, you know? Those can, if there's no other reason for some of those things, those are pieces to definitely pay attention to, especially in men, actually. I find that a lot of times there's a huge stigma around men being able to seek out support and find people that they can talk to about this. The other piece, third piece I would say is find a group like this. All of you guys are welcome to come to one of my support groups. We talk about these things all the time, but finding other people that understand what you're going through and who can listen, and not necessarily give advice. To me, giving advice is a reaction when we're uncomfortable with the situation versus like, wow, that must be so hard. I'm so glad you told me. How are you coping with that? You got to find somebody when you're going through some funk, you got to find somebody that can really, really listen.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
I think it's a good time for some questions from the people here. I'm turning this back to you. And I and John will help you with the questions. People need to put their hands up if they want, if they would like, so that would be helpful. As George Allen has just done. So George,
you're first, as usual.
Not quite as you. What you said is all really very interesting, but there's also, I think, a starting point, and that's with yourself. I'm reminded of the is it Ray Stevens song, "Have a Little Talk with Myself." You have as he puts it, a private conversation, a self-examination, a little attitude correction, a little soul searching inspection, and then begin to realize what's wrong with you, analyze it, and then begin to think of a way forward. So where would you say, how well can we ourselves really heal ourselves?
I would say it's absolutely possible to heal yourself. And that's where we get into some of the background with trauma, right? We know that signals from the body, those feelings and emotions come into the right hemisphere of the brain. And then the left hemisphere of the brain is where logic and language are attached to those feelings. And to some extent, things get stuck, right? That things get, we sometimes say what's stuck that's causing yuck. And so when I'm working with someone that really wants to do some of their own work and their own healing, one of the first things I suggest is, could you draw a picture of your inner landscape? Yeah. Can you draw a picture? Draw me a picture. Because when I ask someone to draw a picture, guess what I tap into? That right hemisphere. And I don't give this left logic hemisphere as much of a chance to respond. It's been amazing. I had a client who drew her inner landscape. It was incredible. She drew these. I said, what does shame look like in your body? She drew these little boxes, right? Because shame keeps us in a box, keeps us safe. And then she had drawn a torso, and in the right around her lower, like right below her belly button, she drew this jagged black line. And I noted that when I was asking her all these feelings, she was drawing them in the upper part of her body. And so the next session, I said, remember how you drew that line? It looked like Charlie Brown's shirt. Remember how you drew that line right there? I said, what's below that line? She thought about it and she said, I don't really know, anxiety. It's like, what happened to you below that line? Well, guess what? She'd had an abortion at 18 that she'd never talked to anyone about. And her body and her brain were trying to heal from some of that. That's an idea of an exercise that you could use on your own. Another one you can do that really helps the right brain and the left brain connect is what we call the butterfly hug. And we cross our arms, for those of us who can cross our arms, and we tap slowly, right? Anything bilateral. Sometimes we rock. This is very calming to the nervous system and helps us heal. We teach this to kids that have been in war-torn areas in the world because it's calming. Other ways that we can help to calm ourselves, calm that nerve, get into the green zone of the rest and digest. Gargling stimulates the vagus nerve. You could try gargling for a minute, singing, doing a really low hum, which those of you that have done yoga, Om. I talked to someone yesterday who had been running a clinic of 16 women, a physical therapy clinic, and none of the women were getting along with each other, and she was in charge. And she sent all of the women to the bathroom and said, you're going to gargle and make a sound while you gargle for 1 minute and see how it goes. And they all were in a better mood after gargling.
Mhm.
Yeah. Does that give you some ideas?
Yeah. What about box breathing as well?
And yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So breathing is huge. If we did not have an exhale, this is kind of interesting to me. You can tell I love this stuff. If we did not have an exhale, the heartbeat would not slow down and it would be over 120 beats per minute. That's too fast, right? So when we inhale, especially through the nose, and we exhale and our exhale is longer than our inhale, we naturally help the body not panic and calm down. Do some of you guys do breathing exercises?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big one. That really helped me get through cancer treatments. I would do breathing exercises in the morning. Yeah, I see some of you guys nodding and showing me what you do. Yeah, thanks for reminding me about breathing, George. That was a good point. What other questions do you have?
I don't see anybody's hand. Oh, Dick, you got something?
Yeah, I was just thinking that a lot of times through tension, we create, we enhance or make worse the pains that we have, or vice versa. And so that we tend to, the more it hurts, the more we get excited, the more tenser we get, the more the pain, we feel the pain. We want to go the other way. You know, we want to, and so maybe you might comment about ignoring your pain or getting relaxed or.
Who's ignored their pain before? Right. We've all ignored our pain. Yeah, I gave a presentation to the Colorado Post-Polio group. We have a camp here every year, which it would be awesome if all of you guys could come to. It's in August. And I gave a presentation on self-compassion. And a lot of times we clench when we're in pain, right? And then we start breathing and we're breathing from here up in the upper part. And you're very welcome, Stefan. One of the things that we do is we recognize it first, right? We identify what it is. Oh, this is a moment of pain. And then we need to really, really connect with the idea that this is a moment of suffering and offer ourselves some self-compassion. Kristen Neff is the researcher who's done the most work on self-compassion, and she has some excellent meditations on her website. And she wrote a book called Fierce Self-Compassion that's really, really beautiful about how our natural tendency is to fight feeling pain. And sometimes when we acknowledge it and we say, this is a moment of suffering, everybody suffers, we can kind of calm it down. Because it's really hard to heal, right? If you're always clenched, it's really hard to relax.
I had a therapist say to me once, I want you to picture a little baby on a changing table and watch that baby breathe. And where does the baby breathe from? The breathe from the belly, always from the belly. And we have been taught to breathe from only up in the chest and in the lungs. And the minute I have this kind of need for self-care, I just sort of visualize myself lying down and I breathe from the belly. And it makes all the difference. And that is a very quick trick, Dick, to get through some of the pain that's happening, but it has to be from the belly, not from the lungs.
And you can know if you're breathing from the belly correctly if you have your hands on your ribs and you breathe in and your ribs go out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Great point.
Yeah, little tricks.
Yeah.
Coping tricks. Anybody else? I don't see another hand here. I wanted to say that everybody who's joined us today, and Jill is a great speaker and a great advocate for advocates. Tell everybody when you go on to your support group sites, and I know a lot of you go to those, and everybody's story matters. And every story they tell is an important story about when they got polio and what it felt like and how it was. And it's all really, really important. But it would be nice to help them switch the conversation to how can I advocate for myself now? You know, the stories live and the stories are essential. We all have them and they're all equally as important. But it would be nice if all of you would spread the word that here's a place where we learn a little more about how to advocate for ourselves and how to cope with what we are living with today.
Well said.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know there is one other thing in the chat, just so we could address it quickly. And that is from Carla, who said when someone is in chronic pain, can they get into the green zone for long?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So that's where we start with what we call resourcing. And the interesting part about the brain is the brain doesn't know the difference between what we imagine and what is real. And so that tapping that I was showing you, that slow tapping, if you can create a place in your head, a safe, calm place, we call it, that you can go that has never been unsafe, and you can really, really visualize it and really focus on it. And maybe your body can move the way you want it to move. And you can do anything. And then you tap it in slow. That is one of the building blocks of helping the brain recognize that it can be in that green zone. And that's something that I'm hoping we can do a little more of with some of the support groups, because all of us could use some resourcing. All of us could use more tools to be able to get in that green zone. And Carla, just knowing you, I have a feeling that you are very much in that green zone when you're with your granddaughter. Yeah. So if you think about your granddaughter and you pull her into your imaginary perfect world where you can do anything, and you do a little bit of tapping, I would expect that feeling would grow stronger and you help that nervous system start to move.
Stefan?
There is.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. There is. Yeah, Stefan.
Yeah, just in direct relation to what you mentioned a few seconds ago, Ina, we were lucky to meet U.S. ambassador here in Slovakia, who is polio survivor himself. it was a great opportunity for us to meet with him at our annual general meeting here in Slovakia. And a few days ago, I have sent him link to this post-polio support groups and our meetings. I provided him with more information about this group. So perhaps later on or sometime in the future, he will join us.
What is his name, please?
Gautam Rana. Gautam. He is Indian in origin. Rana, R-A-N-A.
Thank you so much.
R-A-N-A.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jill, what you were really doing with the tapping is so much a part of EMDR. And that has been one of the reasons that I'm upright and well as I can be, because I have done that and had a great teacher in that for a long time. And now I'm able to do it for myself. And I urge people who don't know enough about EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing, to just go online and read what you can about it. It could not be easier. It could not be simpler. And it's quite a remarkable form of therapy. So thank you for just doing the tapping today.
You're welcome. Thank you for being an advocate for that.
Oh,
I am blown away by how our brains can continue to heal no matter how old we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like a miracle, but it was after 5 sessions. The thing that had weighed me down all my life was gone, just gone.
Yeah.
And it was extraordinary, just extraordinary.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here we are at the end of another important day and another day where we get to be who we need to be in this world. And if there are no more questions, I will thank Jill so much for coming on and giving us our best, as she always does with all of the groups. Thank you so much, Jill. Thank you, Ken, for taking the lead and organizing this with Jill and being a great moderator today. Great moderator.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks. Anybody want to sign up? We have another meeting the next month, and I can't remember.
And we're meeting right after this.
No, not you, Rangela, not you yet. Wait, hold on.
It's a doctor. Her name is Dr. Martha. I'm sorry, I don't have her last name.
That's okay, but we have another open meeting.
She's a general practitioner doctor. So she's going to talk about, and she has polio. So she's going to talk about the doctor-patient relationship.
Great. Okay, so that's our next open meeting, which I hope you'll all spread with your support group attendances. That really means a lot to me and to us. Okay. Thank you, Jill. Everybody have the best possible day. Get out there and be. Let's stop being human beings and not being human doings and be human beings today.